something happens in the end, that's for sure. Dave, you can come up and take a seat by a microphone where we have the people can hear it. You got to pull it a little bit close to you, but not too badly. And then we're going to just have Tanya ask our questions so that we have a consistent process.
Well, that way they can focus on you as a candidate rather than remembering where they were at with the questions. And
she'll do it in a real monotone voice. Okay.
Steve, would you like a bottle of water before you get started? Perfect. I'll be right back.
Okay. That means if they're coming back in, if they've been 1 minute, you got. That ringing sound is people coming onto the Zoom. You probably know that. You can get started anytime you like, Tanya.
We have reviewed your application and supporting materials to include the questionnaire you completed for the Republican Party. Please describe what you believe to be qualities for this position and how your experience has prepared you for this appointment.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask first, could the candidate actually introduce himself? Of course, everybody knows.
Hi, I'm Dave Stevens. I'm Chief Criminal Deputy Prosecutor, Okanagan County. First, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. The qualities for this position that I think are important is that you're not a person that's hot-tempered, that you understand the mission of the office to ensure the safety of the public, protect the victims. And as for my experience that's prepared me for this appointment, I have actually led offices in the past. I've presented budgets, had to go back and forth, negotiate on those things. I've had to supervise employees over the entire course of my career. I've had to do multi-million-dollar budgets. So I understand that. I think that would be the key qualities for this position.
What are the three most important values you demonstrate as a leader? How will your leadership style complement the administration of the prosecutor's office?
My first experience with leading people was when I was in the Navy. I ended up being E5, that'd be equivalent to being a sergeant in the Army or in the Air Force. And they tell you ordering people to do things, to get things accomplished is not leading people. You have to set examples. You have to make sure that they know what they're supposed to do, that they have goals themselves. That's how you lead people. The way it's been going right now is it's ordering people and threatening people. If that's what you end up doing, you're not a leader. So I think the values that I bring are that I understand the mission. Understanding the mission is paramount. You have to know that there's a lot of trade-offs you make in this kind of job. You have to decide what resources I have that I can put on certain cases. So like Class A felonies, of which I've done several trials over the last couple of years, those take up a lot of resources. Now there are other cases, simple possession of drugs, they don't take up a lot of resources, but they do take up time. So you have to make a trade-off when you're considering whether victims are safe, whether the public is safe. The third quality I would say, as I said before, experience. I have led people, I've supervised people in the past.
One of the jobs of a leader is to help an organization articulate its values, purpose, and direction. Describe how you have helped your organization define a vision and where it is and where it is going.
What we started doing a few months ago was issuing press releases on our big trials. So given the fact that we've had people leave, it's very difficult to do trials. I've done several rape trials, some burglary trials, some really important trials. People that needed to go away for very long periods of time because they were endangering our community. So I had our office, they've never done it before, at least to my knowledge. Prior administrations may have done it. I said, we got to issue some press releases. People need to know what we're doing to protect the public. I think if you let the public know what we're doing, how important it is, the efforts that we're making to protect victims and to protect our community, then we'll go a long ways to the public understanding our vision and what we're doing.
What experience do you have in office management? What experience in managing budgets?
Well, I did have experience when I was in the military supervising people. It's quite a bit different. When I was a deputy prosecutor in Spokane, we would get Rule 9 interns. These would be young people that are in law school. They are qualified to act under the supervision of an attorney. And I would actually grab one of those, find a simple case, like a simple possession of methamphetamine or something like that, and I would let them do a trial. I would supervise them intensely, make sure that they understood exactly what was going down, and then except for the part where it was voir dire and you actually have to choose a jury, which is more an art than something you can actually tell somebody how to do. I let them do the entire trial. When I was in Afghanistan, I had to supervise attorneys that were Afghans. That had its own issues. They did not, a lot of them share our values. They were there for the money. Making sure that they stayed on task and get things done was difficult. When I was international prosecutor in Kosovo, I had to supervise staff and attorneys who were not Americans. Their primary language was not English. Sometimes that was very difficult. Making sure they understood exactly what had to be done and what I wanted them to do was very important. When I was chief public defender for the tribes, I had to present budgets, I had to supervise people, I had to reprimand people, I had to mentor people. So over the course of my career, I've often had to supervise people, I've often had to manage people. I think I have a lot of experience in that area.
Describe your style of supervising staff and subordinates. Give us an example of an incident where that style worked well.
When I was hired to be the chief public defender for the tribe, they told me my very first course of business would to be fire an attorney. They said she was nothing but a trouble, and they directed me to fire her. And I said, I'm looking at what my job is here, and are you going to add that and say, did I have to do that? And they said, no, but once you get to know her, you're going to fire her. So I went in there. I didn't make any big changes right away. I wanted to understand how everything was working, who was who. This was a very troubled person. She had some issues in her personal life that were affecting her professional life, but she was incredibly talented, incredibly experienced. So after I got to know exactly what was going on, I worked with her, and we weren't addressing her personal issues. That was separate from work. I was able to get her to be highly effective. She did several trials. We did some significant appellate work to change the case law for the tribes. So I was very proud that I was able to take somebody that everybody was saying get rid of. In the military, they tell you that you're rarely going to find a sailor that can't be used, that can't be safe, that can't be mentored. And sometimes you have somebody that there's so much going on, so much wrong with them that you can't fix them. But a lot of times, if you really work at it, you get to know the person, get to know the situation, you can do great strides. Maybe you're not going to make them a perfect person. Maybe you're not going to, make their life pleasant and better or anything like that. But you can help them to get the job done, because the mission is what's paramount. And the mission for the prosecutor's office is to protect the public, protect the victims. So I was very proud that I was able to do that. I'm not the kind of person who likes to threaten people. If you have to do that, you do it behind closed doors. You got to get to a situation where you've counseled them before, you've talked to them before, you've tried to resolve it, it can't be resolved, and then that's what you have to do. But, sometimes somebody will do something that's just so outrageous that it has to be dealt with immediately. That's rarely the case. So I'm the type of person that likes to work with people.
Describe a time when you were disappointed in the results of your supervision. What did you do?
I had some issues when I was in Afghanistan. I had a staff when I was in Cardez. They kept telling me we couldn't go out there and meet with the judges, meet with the law enforcement that we were supposed to train. That basically we would just have to sit on the base and we were generating paperwork. I went and I talked to the security and got the lowdown on that. And I said, well, yeah, Cardez is a pretty dangerous place. Yeah, we have to take different routes whenever we go somewhere. There are people out there that want to harm us. And they said, no, it's not that we can go and do it. And I said, we've got to do it. And I had to fight the staff tooth and nail. One person had to be let go. I was very disappointed the way that went. But like I said, I don't think they shared our values. They were in it for the money. Most people that take the prosecutor job, they're not in it for the money.
What steps will you take to establish and maintain positive working relationships with the staff?
Well, I've already done that. I think if you ask the staff that's there now, they know that I'm a person that cares about them. I understand their workload. When things have to be done, they jump up and they're willing to do that for me because they know I respect what they do. They work very, very hard. I would say that understanding how hard they work, what they put aside to do this kind of job, which a lot of them could go get jobs that pay more somewhere else. But they're actually doing this because they care. That's how you maintain a positive working relationship with those people.
It is important to encourage the open expression of ideas and opinions. How did you do this? How did you make it safe to present controversial or unpopular opinions?
This comes up. I mean, we have attorneys in the office, and there's no shortage of people wanting to express opinions. And a lot of times I'll just tell them, think out loud. Just, we're not going to censor anybody. And I'll say that myself sometimes. I'll go, I just want to think out loud. These are the ideas that are going in my head. And I'll talk to Felicia, or I'll talk to Jason Davion, and I'll say, well, what do you think? And they'll go, oh, what do you think about this and everything like that. But when you belittle people, when you threaten them because, they point out that, something may not work out the way you want, that's just the morale. It just takes the morale in the entire office. And so I've always been willing to listen to other people's opinions. I don't have a monopoly on the best ideas. We have some very, very talented and smart people in that office. I'll often go to one of the staff. I'll go, Kelly, she's the one, the OA in charge of district court, and I say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And she'll go, oh, well, the reason why that works that way, and we could do it this way, and stuff like that. So, maybe I had a goal, and she goes, no, you can't do it that way. Maybe you can do it this way. So when you don't threaten people or pressure people, you can get a lot of valuable input. And we got some very talented people in that office.
Working cooperatively with someone who did not share the same ideas as you can be difficult at times. How do you effectively achieve the objective?
Well, like I said before, we're dealing with attorneys. They often have their own ideas, incredibly well-educated people by and far. And so sometimes it ends up where you have to say, listen, this is the way I want it done. You're the person in charge. So sometimes, for instance, we had a real issue with driving license suspended 30s. They take out 30 to 45% of the docket. The judges aren't going to give anybody any jail time, especially now on these things. They're not going to pay any fines. They're not going to do any jail time. But the legislature passed a statute a few years ago saying that the elected prosecutor or appointed prosecutor could direct that law enforcement doesn't cite these as standalone, because in Superior Court, what happens is the prosecutor has to file charges. But when it comes to misdemeanors, law enforcement officers can write you a citation right then and there. You're charged with the crime. But the elected prosecutor can tell law enforcement, direct them to not cite these things. They can still even arrest if necessary. And they can still call the prosecutor and say, hey, for various reasons, I'd really like to cite this person. But these were taking up huge amounts of our caseload. We lost a person in district court. And I've been saying for the last several months, because there was a period where we were trying to hire somebody for district court where we only had one person. This person was overwhelmed. And 30 to 45% of his docket were cases where the person was not going to get relicensed. They're not going to do any jail time. They're just going to take up all our resources, where we have very serious cases, DUIs, reckless driving, assault for DVs. These are the ones where the public safety is in danger. The public is in danger. Victims are in danger. And so I've been saying basically for the last 6 months, and floating the idea for the last year, we need, given the circumstances, not to file these at this time. That doesn't mean that they never get filed. So they can be filed, especially if the person keeps picking them up. We can file those. But given our resources at the time, I said we have to do this, and we started that last month.
Do you have a plan for working with law enforcement agencies in Okanagan County in regards to providing legal updates and cooperation between the offices?
Well, to follow up on what I just said, law enforcement was not happy about this. When we said driving license in thirds, we don't want you to cite them. We want you to send them over for review. And, I know some officers, because I've done trials, and we do trials. You bond with those officers. I mean, you basically in a battle situation for a couple of days with a law enforcement officer, and you get to know them really well. And some of them called me, and I explained exactly what was going on, because the letter that was written, the directing them not to do it did not go by me, and I would not have worded it that way. I would have told them that they still had discretion, that they could still even arrest if necessary. They could call our office if they really felt there was some particular reason why this one should be cited. So, you know, you have to develop relationships with law enforcement. And the best way, in my experience, to develop relationships with law enforcement is actually doing trials. Once law enforcement knows that you're doing trials, that you're not one of those people, there's a lot of prosecutors that talk about doing trials, that threaten to do trials, but you have to actually do trials. That way you get the respect of the court, you get the respect of the defense attorneys, you get the respect of law enforcement. So, and 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, the sheriff asked if he could have a prosecutor because he was doing a DUI training for new law enforcement, and I happily went and did that, and law enforcement really liked our part of the training.
How do you propose to work with neighboring counties and your counterparts from other agencies?
So I've always done this, and I've always wondered why other prosecutors didn't do this. So I get a case, and the guy's got a felony. I look at his criminal history. He's got an open case in Ferry County, Franklin County, Grant County, and it's real easy. It takes me a minute, and then I go and I can figure out who the deputy prosecutor is prosecuting that case. So what I do is I go and generate an email to that person with a copy of the probable cause statement and telling them, hey, I got him on this. You need to know because you've got him on that. And then I would work with those people. And that doesn't happen. I've taught our prosecutors to do those things. And I've worked in other prosecutors' offices, and that doesn't happen. And I really don't understand why that doesn't happen. I have very good relationships with Tim Rasmussen, Stevens County, Katie Ebert, and she knows me well. I think, Douglas County, before I came here, it offered me a job. So I know these people well. I do communicate with them. I let them know what's going on when we have defendants in common. It often comes out where they'll have a conflict, and then you've got to call them up and say, hey, we've got this person, and because they're related to somebody in our office or they're related to the judge or something like that, would you guys prosecute it for us? And you have to reciprocate on that, because if you don't reciprocate, they're going to stop doing that. And I have very good relationships with those people.
How do you manage to work with people whom you are not comfortable with? What do you do in such situations?
Well, I'm involved in an adversarial process. I mean, the public defenders, they have their goals. Most of them, we get along really, really well. There's a few that are difficult to deal with, and I just act professionally. I don't get personal. I'm doing a job. I mean, I think that's a problem with why we're in the situation we are now. If somebody took everything personally, if somebody disagreed with that person, you would take it and think they're against me because of some protected class or some kind of slight. And it's like, no, they're just doing their job. And you need to be professional. So being a professional, I've been doing this for a long time. And even before I did this, the jobs that I had, you had to act as a professional. So I would say you act professional.
What is the most useful criticism you ever received and given?
I always try to criticize people not by telling them they did it wrong. I mean, sometimes you have to tell somebody they did it wrong. You can suggest, maybe you should have done it this way. Maybe you should have considered this. You don't need to belittle people when you're giving them criticism. Sometimes you have to do that behind closed door. You don't stomp around the office going, and then call somebody in your office because then everybody knows. I mean, the last person that was just appalling. So let's see, the criticism I've received. Perspective, I tell my young attorneys, because I put in way too many hours. I really care about my job. I really want to hold people accountable. Some of the people that I'm prosecuting have just done incredibly horrific things. I have little kids, and I've done approximately 200 criminal jury trials. Now, it shouldn't mean anything to you. A mechanic tells you to fix 200 cars, you go, 200 cars, what does that mean? That's way more than most people have done. I mean, if somebody has done half of what I've done over the period of my career, I would be incredibly impressed and hire that person on the spot, all things being equal. But I missed some time with my kids. There were vacations that I could have done with my wife and kids. I tell everybody in my office, you got to have perspective. And I wish I had listened to that criticism a lot sooner. Finally, I listened to it, and I've had to make that time. I was actually supposed to be packing right now for a Caribbean vacation that I promised my wife. And when this came up, we had to reschedule that. Thank God we had taken out the insurance to do that. But I think the most useful criticism I've ever received was have perspective and realize that, this is not being in that office, doing those trials. You got to have more perspective and live your life and take care of the ones you love.
Describe the process or methodology that you used when you were making decisions.
Well, it's like the young attorneys will come to me and they'll say, hey, how do I do this? And I'll say, what if the court rules say? And, it takes a few times, and they realize, don't come to Dave unless you've looked the rule up first. Because Dave will say, I'm not going to talk to you until you've made some effort. So when I have to make a decision, I do a little bit of research, and if I can't find the answer, we have incredibly talented, very smart people in that office, and I go to them. I'll say, hey, I'm thinking about this, but what do you think? Sometimes they'll say, that's brilliant, Dave. Or sometimes they'll say, no, that sounds like a bad idea. So when I first got to the office, one of the things in felonies is you have to have a really good understanding of somebody's criminal history, because we have what's called the grid, the severity of the offense. It's the number of prior felonies you've had. And so I always thought you want to know your starting point. I mean, if you're going to make an offer, you're going to understand how much time the guy's looking at, understand how much resources you want to put in this case. You have to understand that person's criminal history. So I said, hey, instead of doing this after the case has gone to an omnibus hearing, it's well into it, when you file that case, you should score them up front. Know exactly what their criminal history is. Order the ones that you need, because sometimes they're from another state or something like that. You're going to have to get the judgment sentence. You're going to have to get some additional paperwork. And so we started doing that. And the office thought, that's a lot of work up front. But as I tell people, if you do the work up front sometimes, you save yourself so much work later on. And so a lot of people were fighting me on that. And the judges love it, because as soon as the case is filed, they know exactly what the guy's history is. And then I started requiring them that, once I got that done, for the defendants to actually stipulate to their criminal history, because we would have cases come back where the guy was saying that there was a scoring issue. And then why are we doing resources on that? Why are we doing an appeal on that? If we had made them agree to it beforehand, we've done a little bit of work up front, work that would have to be done anyways. We would save ourselves so much trouble. They have them stipulate. We would save ourselves so much trouble. There are certain things you can do when you have experience, when you know what goes on, you've seen what goes on. You can actually save a lot of time and effort. I have that experience.
What was the most difficult professional decision you've had to make? Why was it difficult? How did you go about making your decision?
Geez, you know, I have to make incredibly difficult decisions routinely. I mean, you get a case where a kid did something when he was 13 years old, but it wasn't reported until he was 18 or 19 years old. So now he gets charged as an adult for something he did when he was 13. And that could be a terrible thing that he did. There's nothing in between. You look at what that kid's doing now, the kid's looking at getting in the military, and you have to work with the family and decide what to do. And those are routine decisions I have to make every single day. And sometimes people aren't happy with those decisions. Sometimes you have to tell the family, listen, we're not, you know, they want the person's head on a pike. And you go, listen, that's just not realistic given all the facts. So I have to make all those kinds of decisions all the time. You know, telling law enforcement that a case isn't going to go forward because there's an evidentiary problem. They go, well, I know the guy is guilty. Yeah, but can I prove it in court, given the evidence, given the witnesses that I have? So you have to make those kinds of decisions every single day. I've made them for decades.
There will be times when you will be placed under extreme pressure on the job. Explain how you will handle such pressures.
At times, all the time. Especially the last year, the pressure. You'll remember a few weeks ago, I was putting out resumes, and then the person in the position found out, and then brought me before you. I think somebody asked, would more money help? I was like, I'd like to get paid more, certainly make my wife happy, but that wasn't it. There was an unworkable situation because that person wasn't carrying the load, because that person's management style was it just devastated the morale. People were leaving right and left. I was going to leave. Another attorney was going to leave. And I think that's why we're here today, because that person found out I'm carrying the vast majority of felonies and serious felonies in that office. And I've been saying for a year, this is unsustainable. This is untenable. I am working. Now, all my hobbies that I do, a lot of my personal life, I'm not able to do. And my problem was the cases are going to fall through the crack. Things were falling through the crack. And so I've been under tremendous stress. I mean, I've had people, I've been in situations in Gardez where people were shelling us. We were in a bomb shelter, and I'm calling my wife, and I said, hey, they're shelling us, honey. You know, she's going, oh my God. And I go, we're pretty safe and stuff like that. I've been in some I was in the first Gulf War. I got an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal. I've been in some incredibly stressful situations in my life. I don't mind stress. This is, it's not like I was forced to take this job. It's not like when I'm volunteering myself now, I'm being forced into it. I'm more than willing to deal with stress. But there's got to be a situation where there's some kind of hope. You got to know that things are going to work out eventually. And with the person that was in charge, I did not believe I could ever get that person to the point where they wouldn't be terrorizing the office, that they would carry a decent caseload. So I made the decision it was untenable. I'm more than willing to handle stress. I've handled stress in my life before. I can do it again because I know that I can fix this.
Have you taken in the last year to maintain your technical competence in the operation of your practice?
Well, we're required under the rules of professional conduct to go to certain training. I actually like going to those trainings. I usually see people I haven't seen for several years. They give us good things. But in my type of job, defense attorneys are constantly educating us. And they're filing motions, so I have to read up on that area of law. I have to write a response. It's just kind of part of the job is you're constantly being educated in these things. So I've done what I had to do, constantly being educated, constantly thinking about what we can do better. So that's what we do.
What do you do to support your professional development?
I belong to several organizations. They send me things, you know, like, so I'm really interested in the rule of law overseas. So I got contacted about a month ago, and they said, hey, do you have any experience with DNA? And I said, yeah, I've done several rape trials where DNA was an issue, so I presented that. I've got a good, from a prosecutor's point of view, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a DNA specialist, but how it works. And they said, hey, would you be willing to do a Zoom conference in Lebanon? And I said, oh, geez, you know, I'm really, really busy, but I can miss a little sleep. I can miss a little personal time, what little I have. And I put together a presentation. We had 50 prosecutors, 50 Lebanese judges. They had some very interesting questions that went on for a couple hours. I got up at 4 a.m. to do it because of the time difference. It's an interest that I have. The Department of State a couple of years ago, Montenegro, they do a different kind of charging in Europe. It's called narrative charging. So you don't just file the charges and say, hey, you did this. They put an entire narrative. You know, we investigated this, we found this. So the United States government really wants them to do plea bargaining like we did. That's something I really regret that we have to do. People should be pleading to what they did. But having to make deals to resolve cases, it's something we have to do. It's something I don't actually care to do, but I do it because we have to do it. And so they wanted me to go there, and I was actually, as the defense attorney, was supposed to present the counter argument. And what the judge from the United States and the prosecutor from the United States didn't understand was how they do their charging. So if you do a narrative charging and then you do a plea bargain, well, everybody's going to wonder in these kind of countries, what did you get wrong? Who got bought off? Stuff like that. And so, you know, and I explained this to them, you know, this is going to be your issues if you start doing American-style plea bargaining. I don't think it can work with your system. And they were, I got really good reviews because I was the only one that understood. That's something that I find very interesting. I've been all over the world courtesy of the United States military, the United States government. That's kind of the professional development. And it is from a criminal law perspective. That is my interest, criminal law. I'm not interested in civil law.
We have 2 questions
just
left,
a little bit
and
more
then time for questions if you have them in just a couple minutes left on the clock. How do you know you will be successful as an elected prosecutor?
Because when I've managed people before, I've been successful. And we have a really good crew in that office. We have some very talented people. We have some very intelligent people. I know that, and they have all shared with me that the main impediment for them is the current leadership. And I think, frankly, any reasonable person would be such an improvement. That office is a good office with good people. So I know that I will work well with them, and they will work well with me. So that's how I know I'll be successful.
By law, you are the legal representative of the Board of County Commissioners, or you would be if you're selected. What are your thoughts on using outside counsel in specialty civil matters?
You have to. I mean, it gets, you know, I would love to have more criminal prosecutors. I mean, just workload, stuff like that. But if you guys were to give me money for one person, as much as our office does criminal, I would get another civil attorney because we have one. And God forbid anything should happen to him. Who's going to take over that case? Those are rarefied people. finding somebody who can do that job is not easy, especially somebody who does it well. But he can't be a specialist in everything. So sometimes you have to go, and you have to go to the experts. I mean, I did that in the entire course of my career. When I would get a case, I would go to the experts sometimes. Somebody had done that type of case before, had a lot more experience. When I was a technician in the military, and something that came up that was way outside of the norm, we went to the experts. That's what you do. So frankly, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't really understand the question. That seems to me to be just common sense.
In under 1 minute, do you have any questions for the board?
I don't know if it's so much as a question as a statement. Either of the applicants would be 1,000 times better than what we have now. Either of us are qualified. I think the important distinction is that I have the experience leading, presenting budgets, and I actually have the caseload now, the majority of the caseload. So it wouldn't be somebody taking over a caseload. We would get more staff. I think it's going to be a lot easier to get more staff now that I can't imagine when people call up to their friends asking about this office, what they're being for. But that's going to stop. They're going to know that this is going to be a good place. This is a great place to live and a good place to work, and I think we're going to be able to resolve those issues. And it won't be people leaving like they've been leaving in droves because of what's been happening. I think we've lost 12 people in the last couple of years, and that is just insane. It's nuts.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Great. Before you then.
What's the exact time that she's scheduled?
11:15.
Okay, perfect.
That's good.
5-minute recess.